Mildly shocking news, kind of good news in general. Claudine Gay is out over at Harvard University as their president with her almost $1 million a year salary. We can talk about that separately, but I'm here talking with Dexter. I mean, were you terribly surprised when a lady who can't decide whether the Jews, whether it's okay to call for the genocide of Jews or not, was kicked out of her job?
No, I think the most unfortunate part is it probably wasn't her equivocation on the genocide of Jews that even got her fired.
No,
Ultimately, it was her years of plagiarism.
it's like beat around the bush. We're doing the Al Capone method here of getting rid of this woman.
Exactly. One would think the former complaint would be sufficient, especially at the premier university of the world, to drive her out. But no, even in the case of her multiple and repeated manifest instances of plagiarism, there are many people who still contend that that even wasn't quite enough to remove her, anti-Semitism aside.
It's so stupid. I gotta say this point, because this has really pissed me off this entire time during this debate, is during her hearing in front of Congress, where she was getting hammered, is it against school policy to call for the genocide of the Jews? Over and over again, beat around the bush, saying, well, the context matters, blah-de-blah, work around that. There is such the most basic answer that you could give. It is against school policy to call for the genocide of the Jews. We have a narrative problem in this country when it comes to what from the river to the sea means. Because all the people that keep calling from the river to the sea don't know what it means. What does that mean? It depends on whether you're some academic, whether you're Hamas, whether you're some random person off the street who's for some reason making their statements known on something they don't understand anything about. The river to the sea refers to the land where Israel exists. Like, and they just say, oh, we'll have a one-state solution, we'll have a two-state solution, it's going to be this easy thing we can just sort out. Like, no, it has been hundreds, if not thousands of years with this part of the land just being back and forth between countless tribes and civilizations.
Well, it acquired the name of Palestine from a Roman emperor in the 1st century after he went in to suppress the Jewish state that was existing there as sort of a Roman client state at the time of the death of Christ. So this is an ancient history of it going back and forth between Jews, Romans, Arabs, everyone who has inhabited that piece of land, or thought they inherited, as I almost accidentally said, that piece of land. It has been in contention for a long time, and to have no context or no understanding as the chief academic in our country is absolutely baffling to me. Again, maybe it's less baffling now that we understand the fact that she is a serial liar who has in a decade published about 10 works, or in 2 decades rather, has published about 10 works and no books. So okay, perhaps it's not shocking to see that someone of this quality would miss the great historical depth of the question about the possession of Israel. But nonetheless, there are modern questions that she's clearly avoiding too when she skirts this issue. I don't think any of us have any question on our minds as to whether or not if a conservative, not that they would, but a conservative or right-wing oriented organization had made the same calls against Jews, essentially promoting genocide, that they would not have been immediately disavowed by the administration at Harvard. So there's a naked bias here as well, in addition to a complete ignorance of history.
And speaking of bias right here, we see the Associated Press posted in their Twitter, Harvard president's resignation highlights new conservative weapon against colleges, plagiarism. And John Bickley, who's I think he's the editor-in-chief over at the Daily Wire, said this article is an embarrassment for the AP on so many levels. And then caught that that they changed some of the text in the article, which was fascinating. For some reason, the AP, what's the writer's name? The writer's name is Colin Binkley and Mariah Bulliget. I don't know. I think it's mainly Colin is the writer for this piece. it didn't realize, oh, by the way, the Native Americans enjoyed collecting their scalps as much as anyone else that was on the frontiers. And also,
Oh,
used by
it's
some
worse than that.
tribes was changed to
What
being the text. And like, no, 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 no. The Native.
what they say is indeed more foolish even than what you just said. They suggest that collecting scalps was an innovation of the white settlers.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's even worse.
We stole that. I never say, hey, us white people, but hey, us white people stole this horrific thing that the Native peoples did.
It is one of the most bogus assertions that and this is the AP who has for a long time been taking their credibility and completely shoving it into the mud. But even for them, for someone who for a long time, an organization which for a long time has been debasing itself, to go so far as to make up this story for the sake of this article is just beyond absurd. I don't even know how to classify this level of mistruth.
This article literally reminds me, I was thinking about it, this reminds me of an NPR article. This doesn't even read like an AP article. This is, I commented on John Binkley's piece, tweet, and didn't get any response on it, but whatever. That it's like, there's a difference. I make it very clear. If you go to newenglandtake.com, our website, I make it very clear. I have interviews, opinions, and analysis. What we are doing right now is analysis. We are not doing original reporting. We're not pulling together the facts. We're pulling together things that exist in the ether that is the internet and the news cycle and putting it together and saying, this is our look at what's going on. And yes, it's opinion, but it's kind of putting everything together in a way that we think is productive to tell the story of what's happening. This is an analysis piece. AP is not supposed to be doing this. This is not what they're known for. They're supposed to be the original journalism, putting together the articles. This is the problem, honestly, I have with the Daily Wire. A lot of their stuff is analysis. They're just as guilty as this, in my opinion, as NPR. But they at least are honest, saying, hey, we're a conservative outlet. You're going here for a reason. You know what you're getting into with us.
Well, exactly. At least with Daily Wire, there's no pretense to it necessarily being straight reportage. You know, when I write, I never write anything, even as analysis when I publish. I always publish as op-ed. Because that's what I do, you know, in terms of what I provide. I'm not, even if I unearth things myself, I still publish it in the context of op-ed when I write. I think when Daily Wire writes, generally it always comes out, though they do some reporting, in terms of opinion. This is the Associated Press. This is a wire service that is meant to be providing news to reporters, to journalists across the country. It's a wholly different animal, and it's entirely unsuited to this level of opinion.
Yeah. And obviously the big issue they had is the plagiarism case basically came down to Chris Rufo, who is he's a reporter, but he's an activist as much as he's a reporter. Let's be straightforward when it comes to that. He's doing something, which all power to him if he wants to do that. But he found out,
of course, and again,
yeah,
this is another one of these reporters who maybe use the term more broadly than I or you would. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you're on the DeSantis announcement Twitter space, you're not a journalist in the sense that we would traditionally use the term. He's an activist that's very good at writing and very good at putting together an argument. And he used his amazing skills to put together just scratching the surface of the plagiarism that Gay is accused of, and even left-wing activists and academics have had to admit, oh yeah, she lifted a ton of stuff. And what makes it especially bad, there's the honest people out there, the honest scholars out there when it comes to it, said this hurts the people she's allegedly trying to help. She is a scholar when it comes to DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion stories and things like that. She is specifically stealing work from other minority writers, which means that those minority writers are not able to get the recognition. Because this is how it works in higher ed. Sorry if everyone's heard this before, because it's been covered in the news so much.
No, this is useful though for
in academia, you get chances for scholarships, you get chances for grants, professorships, lectureships, going on sabbatical, presidentships
Harvard
of
presidencies.
universities that make almost $1 million a year for your own pocket. You get that based on your scholarship. And if you are not getting recognized, because now everyone's recognizing the president of Harvard, it's like, of course you're going to recognize that person because of who they are. They must have had this rigor when it comes to their work, when she obviously didn't. She lifted entire paragraphs from people and just kind of moved a few words around sometimes. She didn't always move words around. And I think it's at least half of her scholarship at this point has been brought into question because of possible plagiarism or duplicative language, as they keep trying to say. It's plagiarism.
Well, I think there are over 60 instances now that are alleged. Yeah. And again, this is talking about, I think, 10 publications or 20 publications over a decade, no books, and 60 allegations of plagiarism. It's, number one, not only an unimpressive academic career that they hired her on, but when you look at the rate at which she is accused now of plagiarism, it's enormous. It goes to include almost everything that she ever could have written. But this is the thing. It wasn't actually, for me at least, Chris Rufo who really introduced, though I know he broke some of these stories, it wasn't necessarily him that introduced me to much of this, but Bill Ackman, in fact. Mm-hmm. Bill Ackman, who is the activist investor who is himself actually a Democrat, and a major, at least former contributor to Harvard, who really did a lot to bring this to light. Again, Chris Rufo reaches however many people, but he's a conservative sort of Twitter character. Ackman brought this really well out into the mainstream, and I think he drove a lot of the pressure that went against Claudine Gay, that got her out, not only because of his donations, but because he could give a wider hearing to these claims against her that Rufo first brought forward. And he took it further, too, which I really, again, as someone who's a Democrat, I really appreciate him for having taken this forward into now not only addressing the claims of plagiarism, but also DEI itself. He's really started to call into question the entire ideology that not only brought her to Harvard, but that she embraced there and that Harvard continues to perpetuate again until very recently. The Harvard Corporation gave her full-throated support. And I give him a lot of credit for being one of the people who have brought these questions to the mainstream. Again, not only of her misdeeds, but also her entire ideology. And that needs to be called in question too, because how did someone who published so little, and even what she published was of so little interest, how did she rise to this most prestigious position? This is Harvard, one of the greatest academic institutions in the universe. How did she rise to this position with such a small resume, unless she was permitted or promoted on the basis of DEI policies? So it raises a whole larger question.
In addition to politics, though, and that's
they're the same. They're the same.
Almost the right articles to write. She manipulated the system to get to where she was. She was making, and by the way, all her salary, because she was making so much damn money over at Harvard, is on the Harvard tax nonprofit returns that you can find.
Well, she's still making it too, you know.
Yeah, you can find her. She was making. I think I did it was like $860,000 a year before she was made president.
As far as I know, it's about 900,000 she was making base. And of course, this is the Harvard president. So she is making money as a consultant. She's making money as a speaker. She's making money on top of all of this. And I find it kind of fascinating, too. And it's a real testament to the nature sort of the modern liberal mind that when someone who is a progressive liberal, especially an intersectional progressive liberal as she was, all of the sins of progressivism can be forgiven. So, racism, anti-Semitism, plagiarism, wealth. She is a wealthy person. All of these things, which are crimes to the progressive liberals, are in Claudine Gay completely forgivable. And attacking any of these things now, at least according to the AP, is a conservative talking point.
Yeah.
These are the very things for which progressive liberals are attacking their enemies every day. And somehow she embraces them in every way, and yet they are badges of honor when she does them and things to be defended. Whereas if anyone else were a wealthy anti-Semitic liar, especially if they were on the right, would be the object of their goals for destruction.
And she had the gall to write an opinion essay in the New York Times. If you side with us whatsoever, if you think that Claudine Gay, hey, maybe she's a little sketch at least, read this essay. Because guess what? You're going to be on our side so quickly. So quickly. Because Claudine Gay, what just happened to me at Harvard is bigger than me. Oh my God. Let me see here. On Tuesday.
It is, darling, but not in the way that you think.
I want to step down. As I depart, I must offer a few words of warning. The campaign against me was about more than one university, one leader. This was merely a single skirmish in a broader war to unravel public faith and pillars of American society. Yes, because people like you are the reason why no one trusts higher education in 2023 in this country. Why? That's literally one of the reasons why I'm happy for my day job not to be in higher ed anymore, is I saw this escalating. These affinity group is what they call it, are the most important thing when it comes to the marketing communications of higher education nowadays. And we saw stuff coming from the University of New Hampshire just a couple weeks ago, I think it was, where one of the student housing, their Instagram accounts got noticed by some politicians in New Hampshire and started to get all sorts of attention because they were just preaching all this DEI and white racism nonsense. It's like the way it's being done is wrong. Yes, Dexter and I may disagree a little bit on this bit, but I think there is value to making sure communities that are underserved we get some people educated in them so that they're able to go back to their homes and fix these communities.
No, sure.
Especially this is the reason why from the law school side of it, I'm a lot more forgiving when it comes to law, because you need some highly trained lawyers to re-enter these communities to hopefully start fixing it by becoming DAs and defense attorneys and civil attorneys for various other family matters and things like that. Because if there aren't people that understand how people work in these communities, there's huge representation problems. But when you make your entire argument that I'm this skin tone and that's the whole reason, that's not okay.
Oh, no, I think you're absolutely right, especially as you say, in terms of the law school and these sort of practical professions that need to exist in every community and have a real intimate understanding of how those communities work and what's at play there. But the fact of the matter is, I think those of us who are from New England have known for a long time, because we're near to it, that Harvard in particular was not going in that way, even though it was embracing sort of leftist policies. It was tending a lot more towards, as many of our universities are, the liberal arts, these sort of soft professions and things that were being encouraged there. I mean, if you're not from here, I'll say to anyone who might be listening to this who isn't, and you come to Cambridge, you will be able to identify a Harvard student in the first breath because they'll tell you. This is a crowd. Yeah, this is a crowd of pretentious left-wing liberal arts majors in many, many cases. This is not the Franklin Pierce School of Law, which is turning out practical lawyers who are doing good work. Harvard has for a while, as many of us know, been churning out sort of liberal drones. So it's not at all shocking to see this, but it's disheartening. And, people are saying now, maybe with the ouster of McGill at Penn as well, that we can turn this in a different direction where we can be turning out useful geniuses now from these great institutions. I hope that's the case, but I certainly don't have any confidence that it is. Because these people are emblematic of the problem we're talking about. They're not the source. And being rid of them will not be rid of the source of this rot that exists in academia right now, which is depriving us of the people who we need from the colleges and universities and the law schools and the medical schools, and again, turning out professors and poets and loons.
Yep, definitely. All right, NewEnglandTake.com. I link all the articles we talk about in the episode description as well as on the website. Please be sure to check that out. Like and subscribe if you're checking that out on YouTube. Thank you for joining me, Dexter. All right, like and subscribe. Check out the podcast on all your podcast platforms. You always get the audio early, so you never know when it's going to pop in your feed, because, hey, guess what? The only way it gets posted on the website is if I make it live. The joys of pulling the curtain back. Being a new media guy, you don't get to embed the podcast player until your podcast is live. So guess what? You get the audio early because I'm not fixing it at 5 o'clock in the morning. All right. Talk to you soon.